So it's going to keep getting tougher and tougher and tougher as we refuse to stand up, as we continue to be silenced by little men with little mustaches, and as we continue to be made into weaklings. It's pathetic and sad. So,
Are they the twirly kind?
I wish they were.
Of mustaches.
They should be.
Villains.
That would be more interesting. That would have been much more interesting, actually. No, instead we got this other guy with the comb over. But yeah, so now we have another version of the comb over guy, right? And it's just a lot of little dictators on the internet who want to cancel people and want to tell people that they say offensive things and therefore they should be destroyed. It's not an equal kind of punishment that suits the crime. It's what's called unjust. So injustice is ruling and reigning in our country and around the world right now in many ways. Because the people that are in charge don't believe in justice. They've gotten away with a lot of stuff. And as they keep getting away with it, they're just going to lose their faith in justice more and more. They're not going to believe it exists. So we're in a situation now where, like in the 70s and 80s, we had a lot of crime. We had a crime resurgence. And who shows up? Who do you think shows up? Dirty Harry, right? Dirty Harry shows up in cinemas and teaches the criminals in the theaters, oh, maybe I shouldn't be such a criminal. Like, culture shows up and says, hey, you know what? Probably shouldn't do that. Like, this is like a cautionary tale, right? Horror films, cautionary tales. So this is the kind of art we need, not just how to live your life well, right? Like here we have a movie by Angel Studios called Possum Trot coming out on July 4th this year. And it's about a bunch of families who decide to adopt children.
Yes.
And the effect that has on the community.
Yeah.
And that's good people doing good things, right?
It's powerful.
So we need stories like that, right?
Yeah.
Give people hope, inspire people. But also we need cautionary tales. Hey, this is something you probably shouldn't do, right? It's a bad idea. Go on the New York subway and beat up people. It's a bad idea. Don't do that, right? Be a bad politician. Probably shouldn't do that, right? Try to censor people in their talk. Probably shouldn't do that, right? So, like, what kind of cautionary tales can we make to teach these things? There's lots of examples. And I actually think that Bible stories themselves can be cautionary tales to us. They're often very nuanced. Jonah is a cautionary tale to Nineveh, but it's also a cautionary tale to prophets who don't always want to do what God says, right? So that's it's a double-sided coin there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these stories are often nuanced. Prodigal son was the prodigal son the guy who left or the guy who stayed? Which one? Who is it? So these are nuanced stories, right? There's no simple black and white. And yet God is teaching goodness and truth the whole time, even though there's no simple black and white. So that takes nuance. You read a nuanced story, you learn how to tell nuanced stories yourself. So I would challenge people, if you're not a Christian, you don't read the Bible, try it on. Like, I dare you. Um, and you're going to be upsetting some people too. Like that, ooh, that's daring, right?
Mm,
So,
yeah.
don't go silently into that cold night, you know.
Yeah.
Um, take some people with you at least. So, you know, um, but, if you're a filmmaker, think about making a Dirty Harry movie. This
Mm,
movie is not very nuanced, right? It's simple black and white characters. But what it does is it teaches you that justice exists,
yeah.
you know, which is what people could use right now. What is the movie? Death Wish is another one.
Mm,
Death Wish is even more interesting because he's not a cop like in Dirty Harry. Dirty Harry, he's a cop in San Francisco. Um, Death Wish is just a dude who I think one of his family members were killed or something, and so he just lives in a bad neighborhood.
yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, these are stories that aren't just exciting, aren't just cautionary tales, right? They are visceral human stories.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well, and speaking of visceral human stories, I like that perspective when it comes to Bible stories.
yeah,
Like they're not just um, these one dimensional kind of characters. It's like The Chosen. There's a lot of heart
hmm
involved here, and there's a lot of room to flesh out these stories and these characters while still telling the story
hmm
of what God did in their life, the testimony.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
That was that was it. That was.
Yeah, sorry. It's because I stepped up a little bit. I stepped away. Um,
um, that's the kind of. I'll talk a little more. That's the kind of story that I'm interested in. Um,
too late. Too late.
I
Just joking.
I love these. It's one thing, growing up and hearing all these Bible stories, and thinking like, well, okay, that's nice. How does that apply to me? What am I supposed to take from that? And then it's another thing to be an adult and to sit with the Holy Spirit and read about Joseph in
Yeah.
Egypt and to read about David, um, dancing, and to read about
Mm.
um, Ruth, and just to read about all these characters and to really feel like you know them,
Yeah.
and that their stories are valuable in a way that I never understood when I was younger.
Right.
There's so much more in these stories. It's really the stories of imperfect people
hmm
and what happens when they put their trust um, in God, like often imperfectly putting their trust in God, and they're not necessarily doing all the right the
Oh,
right things.
absolutely.
They're not following all the religious rules and checking off all the boxes of like, oh, this is the most upstanding person in the Bible. No, they're just making mistakes. They're having emotions. They're keep becoming overwhelmed. They're doing all kinds of things, but they're having faith in God, and they're seeing
Yeah.
Him move in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the greatest men in the Bible were terrible sinners. I mean, look, who are three of the greatest people in the Bible? Moses killed a man, went into exile, right? Couldn't
Yeah.
talk after that, could barely talk. Like, who else? King David killed a man, on the run many times for his life because of all that.
Yeah.
Who else? Oh, Paul killed a man,
Oh, oh yeah.
killed potentially many people. or at least was
he
very partly to blame for much of it.
he said he was the chief of sinners, and
Hmm.
that's in the Bible, so
Yeah.
that makes it true. It's true. If you want to know the chief of sinners, it was him. It was Paul.
Now we know. Now we know. Good old
And
Paul.
he turned out to be the one that God spoke through. So
And all the apostates today love to hate him.
often.
All the apostates love to hate him today. Yeah. Because he's so based. But yeah, they get very offended. They start crying because Paul is so based.